Driving Miss Daisy is the movie for this review. Um, I just watched this again. I first saw it many years ago, but something in me wanted to revisit this. I watched it again, and man, this is a great movie. It really is. I mean, it's at its heart, it is a comedy, kind of like one of those unexpected friendship kind of movies, like. You have Jessica Tandy's character, who's an older Jewish woman in the South, and she's fairly well off. Her son is well off, and takes care of her. And of course, as we see in the beginning of the movie, she's not able to drive. She drives through the fucking garden and almost kills herself. So her son, played by Dan Aykroyd, decides to get her a driver, and the driver, of course, is played by Morgan Freeman in a great role. Um, and it's kind of her reluctance to want anybody to drive her, um, and his kind of persistence on just basically not wanting to get paid to do nothing because the son was paying him anyway, and he didn't see that was right. And that's kind of what tips the movie off, but then what kind of develops through this movie, through the passage of time. This movie mainly takes place in the 50s and 60s, but how kind of very unexpectedly they become very important people in each other's lives, and they do become basically best friends, but in a completely subtle way, not in an over the top, you know, let's go for a picnic, hold hands, whatever kind of deal. But it's something that they kind of don't want to admit to each other because it is so bizarre. I mean, you have a middle-aged black man, a driver, hired help basically, and this old Jewish woman. So it is kind of something that they don't quite want to acknowledge, and there is aspects of racial unity, I guess you could say, but it's just not in an over the top kind of way, which I like because they do speak about issues with like within the '60s, Martin Luther King, and kind of the progressive movement of the time, but in their own words, in their own way. It's not the subject of the movie. It's a thought of a character, and the thing is, the movie is primarily character based. So any kind of grand issues about race, any kind of social issues at all. I mean, it's not the primary focus, which I like. The focus is in of the characters, and that makes, I think, it makes it ring truer to life because they're not always, not every subject. I mean, not every scene of the movie is going to be about them talking back and forth about these issues because that's just not the way life is. So bringing it down to kind of this very human level, this very character-based, this very, you know, delicate relationship between the two, I think is great. And of course they have Tandy and Morgan Freeman. They have such great chemistry. It's really something. Not what at all like first impressions within like the first scenes would kind of suggest. But because the movie takes so much time, because it does gradually develop the characters, that's kind of how it brings such an effect to it. And when it reaches the end and kind of what happens, and I won't give it away, but it's very moving when you kind of realize, yeah, they're important people in each other's lives, and they're friends. They're great friends, actually. And yeah, I mean, obviously the performances in this movie are just stellar. Morgan Freeman, I mean, this is pretty much, aside from Street Smarts, this was pretty much one of his breakthrough roles. He's great, playing Hoke, the driver. He was nominated for an Oscar. He didn't win. I can't remember. Oh, well, he lost to Daniel Day-Lewis that year, so, I mean, whatever. Jessica Tandy, she won the Oscar, and she's just absolutely great. Really, starting already as an older character, I mean, she definitely, even with the makeup, establishes kind of, how she's working with age, and how she really just is this spry old lady. I mean, what can you do? It feels very true because, we know people like that. We know these spry 90-year-olds who, uh, just won't stop. We'll keep going. Act like they're you know, maybe like physically not so, but like young at mouth. uh, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I think I'm devaluing the character in that way, but you know what I mean. You know what I mean. Also great was Dan Aykroyd playing the son. Now he's kind of not quite as understanding of the situation. At the same time, you know he does see the Morgan Freeman character as help and what have you. Give him a raise here and there, whatever, but he won't get too involved as the two of them have been. And his performance is really good. Again, it kind of he's able to convey age even with the assistance of the makeup over the years. I think that's done very convincingly. He was also nominated for an Oscar. He was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. I might be wrong, but I do think he is the first cast member of Saturday Night Live to be nominated for an Oscar. So that's that's kind of that's an accolade. That's something. So definitely good on Dan Aykroyd. I think he's a fantastic actor. Fantastic supporting performance in this film. But obviously, the focus is of Miss Daisy and Hoke and their relationship, and it's a very good movie. It's very funny too. I mean, it's not like here's a joke, here's a joke, here's a joke, but it is character based, and kind of the humor comes from the character, and they're bickering back and forth basically, which I love. And kind of underneath the surface of that, there are social issues, racial issues, but it never feels forced. It never feels like you're being given a lecture on racism or anything like that. It's a very different kind of movie than that, and there is truth to it. I think. I mean, definitely. Their relationship is moving, and it feels convincing, and that's the most important thing about the movie. So it's very well made. Did it deserve the Oscar? That's always a question I like to ask. It's hard to say. I mean, I really liked Born on the 4th of July, which was also nominated that year. I can't remember what else was nominated. My Left Foot was nominated. It's hard to say. I do think this is definitely worthy of at least being nominated. So maybe I think maybe it should have won. So maybe it's well deserved. So I mean, definitely not in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. But definitely something I'm going to keep revisiting now that I just recently bought the DVD after not having seen it for like 10 years. I saw it on TV. I mentioned this again in my Chariots of Fire review that TV Ontario did Saturday Night at the Movies, where they'd show movies and talk about them commercial free and do interviews and things like that. So I mean, we're talking 10, maybe 15 years ago when I saw it. So definitely something, it's good to revisit. But it's kind of something that stays with you, and you kind of think about the two characters, and you smile. So it's a nice movie. It's a pleasant movie. But there's just a little bit more to it that I think is the reason why it got the Oscar. So yeah, great movie. I really like it. Yeah, that's my review of Driving Miss Daisy. Thanks for watching.